support to farmers following the passage of Hurricane Beryl. On that occasion, I empathized with you, and I indicated to you then of government's intention to provide support to you as well as to build or to rebuild the agricultural sector. Specifically, I indicated to you that government will provide income support to farmers in the amount of $4,500 for those whose land is up to 5 acres and $9,000 for those whose land is over 5 acres. I also indicated that government will provide material support to our fisher folks and livestock farmers. I further indicated that it was government's intention to have that support available to you in 3 months. This morning, I am happy to report that government has fulfilled its promises to you within the stated time. And our presence here this morning is to provide you and the nation with an update on the payments, those already made and those to be made. In this regard, I am joined by the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Agriculture. He will provide details on the general support the ministry has been providing, and in particular on the support given to farmers in 𝐅𝐎𝐂𝐒 and the Petit Martinique. I am also joined by Dr. Cummins, who will detail the support given and to be given to our livestock farmers. I am also joined by Mr. Justin Rennie on the planned support to our fisher folks. And we also have with us our 𝐻𝐈𝐍 Charles, who is our finance officer, who is a man really responsible for preparing all of the claims. And of course, I will provide details on the arrangements for payment in check for those farmers who requested that the payments be made in check. I wish to make the point, fellow Grenadians and farmers, that all these supports you are about to hear has been financed from government resources. These are not loans, nor are they grants that we would have received from friendly governments or from institutions. These are government monies which are now being given back to our farmers. So let's now talk about the arrangement for payments in check. In responding to the requirements for the payments of income support, some farmers submitted account numbers for financial institutions. Others did not and requested payments in check. So in what follows, I will explain the procedure for said farmers to receive their check payments. But before I do so, let me just make this point. We have this first batch of claims in which 1,410 crop farmers, cocoa and nutmeg farmers, have been to receive their payments. These claims have a total value of $7,015,500. In other words, it represents the amount that has already been paid to farmers directly to your financial institution accounts and, of course, through checks. So, for farmers who are to receive payments by checks, please be advised that all such payments will be made at your agricultural district offices on Thursday, which is tomorrow, the 17th of October. And this will be done at the following places and times. At the Northern District of Surtees, it will be done at the Plains District Office at 10 a.m. Ministers Cornwall and Andal, they will be there to hand out the checks to you as of 10 a.m. For the Eastern District of St. Andrew, the distribution will take place at the Agricultural District Office in Grenville from 10 a.m. And Ministers David Andrew, Delma, and Gloria Thomas, and Lennox Andrews will be there to hand out the checks. at the District of St. David's, at the Las Vegas District Office, our Prime Minister will be there to distribute the checks from 10 a.m. 8 a.m., sorry, from 8 a.m. And for the Western District in Black Bay St. John's, Ministers Andy Williams, Ron Redhead, Philip Telesford, Kevin James, and Claudette Joseph will be there to distribute the checks from 9 a.m. Now, we are kindly asking all farmers who are to receive checks to be at the district offices at least 30 minutes before the distribution time. You're asked to register your name, and of course, that will facilitate the distribution. We are going to inform all such farmers directly. So our staff will call all those farmers who are to receive those checks. We are going to call you and ask you to be there for that time. So before I pass on to our Permanent Secretary to continue, I want to take this opportunity to really express my thanks to the staff of the Ministry of Agriculture and also to the staff of the Ministry of Finance, to the Beryl Secretariat, for their dedication in having those checks prepared and ready for payments. So thank you all very much indeed. Yes.
Thank you, Minister. Permanent Secretary within the Ministry of Agriculture, if you want to add to the conversation, you may do so at this point.
So, Mr. President, good morning to the Minister, Prime Minister, and all gathered, the listening public. As Minister would have indicated, quite a number of payments have been made to date, but I just want to focus in terms of the additional support that we have been provided. So, in the area of land clearing, as we are all aware, the northern parts have been severely impacted by the hurricane with the loss of quite a number of trees, many economic trees. So at least 2 days after the hurricane, the Ministry of Agriculture would have procured approximately 30 chainsaws and deployed them at the district agricultural offices. We also would have entered into some private arrangements with private chainsaw operators to be able to do some cleaning of the lands. So to date, we would have spent approximately $2 million in terms of chainsaw support and cleaning of farmers' land. Again, what would happen is that the farmers would make a request to the district offices, or the extension officers would visit, and they would do the assessment, and then they would deploy the chainsaw gang, whether it is from the ministry end or the private operators, to clean the portion of land that have been affected. We also had an ongoing program called the ADAPT program. Just over $1.3 million have been allocated to that program. To date, we have spent $787,000 in terms of farm labor support. I want to emphasize the fact that because quite a number of trees have failed, it is important that farmers get access to the land, and that's why we would have had that initial drive to clean up the access road and to be able to clean the farmlands so that the farmers could go in and start replanting. In this regard, we have a number of our propagation stations have been damaged. We've been able to salvage some material and some covering, and we have restarted the propagation process. So currently, we have the following plants, or a number of plants available. So in Ashinden, we have approximately 1,784 plants still available for sale. In Boulong, principally do cocoa and nutmeg. So we have 8,917 plants available. In Maran, we have 5,685 plants still available. And Maribo, 1,905 plants. So we would have propagated well over 50,000 plants at the beginning of the year. But these are the balance, and as I've mentioned before, we have started the propagation process so that come June of next year, we'll be able to have plants that is robust and ready to be replanted. We also would have started previously the fertilizer distribution program at a highly subsidized price. we would have procured well over 60,000 bags of fertilizer. We have just approximately 15,000 bags remaining, and these fertilizers are being sold at 3 points in Maribo station. We also have in Bellevue in the Formentry area, and we also have in Mackinboard, the River section. So these are the 3 areas that farmers could go to get the fertilizers at very subsidized price of $50 per bag. Of course, we have said before that these fertilizers privately are being sold for way up of $220 a bag. So it is more than a bargain for the farmers. And we're happy because farmers have been utilizing the services that are available. So I pause at this time, and of course, Mr. Rennie and Dr. Cummins will speak about the other aspect. But this is in terms of farmers' support that we have been provided so far.
Thank you, PS Bagwan. We will take some questions after the agricultural team has completed their presentation. So we're going to hear from Dr. Cummins at this time. He's the Chief Veterinary Officer. Dr. Cummins.
Thank you, and good morning, Prime Minister, morning, Minister PS, and the listening public, and everybody in here. Pleasant good morning. So as agreed upon in the prior press briefings, our livestock compensation packages would include and limited to equipment and material support. And I said limited to because we've been asked numerous times, if farmers are being given monetary support for the livestock component of this burial compensation stuff. So far we have been providing support to the different subsectors. I'll just list what is being done so far and what is to be done as we move forward. So in terms of the apiculture, which is the bee industry, on the 19th of September, the Ministry of Agriculture, to the aid of the 8 Chinese mission, would have donated 50 boxes, 500 frames, 500 wax sheets, 10 extractors, 40 bee suits to the beekeepers. Presently, we had just received 98 bags of pollen substitute that we would be delivering next week to the beekeepers, and that was donated from the Caribbean Beekeepers Association. From the consolidated funds, we have our first 250 out of 1,000 boxes that we would have procured to be given out also. Metal excluders, wax sheet, hive tools, frames, smokers, all these are for support to the apiculture industry. In terms of livestock and pigs, we have donated about 400 bags of feed. Close to 40 farmers benefited in both the Eastern and Northern District. Those were donated by the Caribbean Agriculture Network Disaster Reduction and Management Team. We had 900 bags of feed that was donated to the Sistile from the consolidated funds, about 100 farmers benefiting from this. We had another 1,000 bags of feed went up on the September 10th, with nearly 200 farmers benefiting also, that including P.T. Martinic getting feed. Still to come, we have 150 tanks to send up to 𝐅𝐿. We have 240 tanks. The next bit of the tank should be here today, making it 350 tanks to be donated to both between 𝐅𝐿 and Grenada and P.T. Martinic also. 600 rows of fencing for both sheep and goat farmers to be distributed both between Grenada, 𝐅𝐿 and P.T. Martinic. Building supplies, we have facility upgrade under the World Bank program. Animals to be given out also under that same World Bank program. We have small ruminant genetic enhancement program. We have some AI to take place on the small ruminant under that World Bank program. Cattle and poultry, we have some material support, which includes, that comes from the some consolidated funds. Genetic enhancement under the cattle program. Happy to say that this morning I had a farmer that called in that got a calf from the artificial insemination program. Again, we have a few calves on the ground already. October 3rd, we would have distributed 8,900 day-old chicks with feed, and nearly 30 farmers benefiting. On the week of the 21st, which is next week, we have another 8,900 chicks to be distributed again to farmers. So, and then we have tomorrow or Friday, most likely Friday, because we have a pack schedule this week, another 3,000 chickens to be distributed to to the farmers. We have a portion, about 150 chicks going to the St. Patrick's Anglican Primary School, and the rest will be distributed to some of the farmers and 4-Hers in the different schools. So that's what I have so far.
Great, thank you, Dr. Cummins. Great news for schools as well. Mr. Rennie, Chief Fisheries Officer, we will hear from him at this point.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. Pleasant good morning to Prime Minister and Minister of Agriculture and the head table. On behalf of the Fisheries Department and the Ministry, and by extension the government, we want to continue to extend our sympathies to the entire fisheries sector, specifically our fisher folks who have suffered under Hurricane Beryl, particularly our fisher folks from the sister island of 𝐅𝐎𝐂𝐒 and 𝐼𝐻, which was inordinately affected by the hurricane, but also in the northern part of mainland Grenada, Sautez, St. Mark, St. John to a lesser extent. Following the passage of Hurricane Beryl, the Fisheries Department conducted a total of 5 assessments on 𝐅𝐎𝐂𝐒, 𝐼𝐻, Isle of Rund, and mainland Grenada. The initial cost of the damage was $5.5 million, and that is excluding the damage to infrastructure, because we have had some significant damage to shore-based infrastructure. For example, the Fishery Center at Hillsborough and the newly constructed Fishery Center at Windward, 𝐅𝐎𝐂𝐒. Also in 𝐼𝐻, the fisherfolk cooperative there has suffered significant damage in terms of the equipment, ice machines, cold storage, as well as infrastructure. There are also damage to our communication network. That's the ship-to-shore communication network that provides communication to our fisher folks from the sea to the coast. Significantly, that was affected was also the marine ecosystem. And this is very, very important and critical. Our coral reefs, our seagrass beds, our mangroves, specifically in 𝐅𝐎𝐂𝐒. Most of us who have journeyed to 𝐅𝐎𝐿𝐒 would observe the damage that was caused to Sandy Island. It is not Sandy Island anymore. It looks as Sandy Islands, many small patches of sand. The oyster bed, where we have a significant patch of mangroves, and where most of the vessels from 𝐼𝐻 and 𝐅𝐎𝐂𝐒 sought refuge, the entire system of mangroves have been destroyed. So we do understand the significance of what happened during Hurricane Beryl, and we really want to empathize with our fisher folks up in 𝐅𝐎𝐂𝐒. In terms of the rehabilitation, the government of Grenada took out a facility on the CRIF, which is called Coast, Caribbean, Oceans, and facility, to ensure that in case there is an event that the fishing industry can be rehabilitated. However, the facility is a parametric facility. It's not meant to indemnify you. So in the event that there is a hurricane or some adverse weather condition, excessive rainfalls, floods, what have you, heavy seas, a payout would be made. Now, the payout was not meant to indemnify the fishing industry. It is meant to provide some form of sustainable livelihoods to the industry. Hence, the issue with the assistance, because the payout amounted to 2.9 million EC dollars. However, the total cost of value of the damage was $5.5 million. So a decision had to be made. And as a result, it was decided that the fishing vessel owners who actually sustained damage would receive 50% of the damage. In addition, because the fisher folks up at 𝐅𝐎𝐂𝐒 had suffered inordinately in terms of the hurricane, they would be provided with a one-off payment of $4,500, calculated over a period of 3 months, $1,500 for a 3-month period. That is to provide some relief to the crews of the vessel. So it's not for the owners, it's for the crews of the vessels, because the owners would receive 50% of the cost of the damage. Additionally, we will recognize that in the last decade, a number of persons have been involved in CMOS farming. And when the system arrives, we know that they cause significant damage to the CMOS plot. So our CMOS farmers would receive material assistance to the tune of $71,000. There were 2 small processors, that is primary processors of seafoods. They also received some damage, and as a result, they would receive an approximately $16,000. So the total assistance to the industry, it's $4.6 million. The contribution from coast, or the payout from coast, is $2.9 million. So in effect, government is putting in approximately $1.7 million towards the rehabilitation of the industry, as well as to provide sustainable livelihood to the fisher folks at 𝐅𝐎𝐂𝐒 and Pitimatnik. As I mentioned earlier, the issue of the damage to the marine ecosystem, it is highly technical and scientific, and as a result, there needs to be more in-depth study as to the impact on the marine ecosystem. Those ecosystems has the ability to regenerate itself, but also there needs to be some form of intervention to ensure that the rehabilitation is much more rapid than in the natural state. So I will stop here for now and turn over back to the moderator. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Rennie. At this time, we'd like to invite members of the media to ask questions if you have at this point. We are pressed for time this morning, so we'll try to keep it short. So if you have one question, and then in our next segments, we'll take some more questions. And of course, you can always reach out to the PR officer, Ms. Betty Ann Lazarus, in the Ministry of Agriculture, if you have any follow-up questions. So if you have questions at this time for the team at the Ministry of Agriculture, you may do so at this point. May ask them at this point. Good morning, Rena. Rena has a question. You may proceed.
Yeah. Rena P. Thomas, GBN News. Could the Minister for Agriculture or the PS just verify for us how many farmers received financial support through the bank payment so far, and how much is outstanding, as well as how many farmers will receive checks from tomorrow?
Thank you, Rena.
Right. So we don't have the details in terms of, except if Kev, do you have the details? You have the details. We have the details in terms of the number of farmers who would have received direct payments to their accounts and the amount. What we do have is that payments have already been made or are being made with the checks tomorrow to 1,410 farmers, and the amount is $7,015,500.
If I may also add, this is, of course, is not the final figure, because we still have assessment that is taking place, and we do have quite a number of claims that have been prepared and sent to the Treasury for processing. But we have some challenges there, in the sense that you'll find that sometimes the bank account numbers are wrongly stated, or the names do not match the account, and once these things have to be sent back to be rectified. And of course, there is a policy statement that we'll print as less check as possible. So what we had to do at the ministry end is to put, let's say, like is a riser that is the payment is being made. So all the persons who would have had accounts in a riser would be grouped under that particular institution, and one check would be made, and of course they would make the payment to the individual account. So we're having these kind of nuances that we're working through the system, but as the Minister would have indicated, so far we can confirm definitively 1,410 farmers have received, but we have equal amount to receive, but we just try to sort through these challenges of bank account, checks, etc., etc.
Right. Thank you, PS, and thank you, Minister. We have two more questions. Linda Straker, you may proceed. One question at this point, and then Princess Paul, you have a question. You may proceed as well after Linda Straker. You have the floor.
Good morning to, are you hearing me?
Yes, we are.
Good morning to you and the current head table. My question is, can the minister or probably the PS explain why a decision was taken to have government ministers other than the Minister for Agriculture or officials within the Ministry of Agriculture hand out checks to the people who are receiving checks between today and tomorrow, please God? Is this politicizing the process of handing out check to people who are affected by Beryl?
No, sorry. Good morning, Linda. Nice to hear your voice again. No, Linda, this is not about politics. This is about efficiency and effectiveness. The farmers, they have been waiting for those monies for a very long time now. So we have to find a way to get the money to the farmers as quickly as possible. So it will take some time for me as the Minister for Agriculture to go around the country in some days to hand out checks to the farmers. Yeah? And therefore the easiest way is for us, all of us as a government, to assist the Minister of Agriculture in handing out those checks. And that's the reason why the decision has been taken, right? We don't want to keep our farmers waiting to receive their monies.
Thank you, Minister. And thank you, Linda, for your question. We now move to Princess Paul with your question.
Good morning, everyone. Nisha Paul, freelance journalist. I'm just need some clarity on what happens if someone missed the deadline to apply for the financial support for the farmers and so. What is the process that should be followed if someone missed the opportunity?
No, there is no deadline. Good morning, Ms. Paul, and thanks for your question. Actually, there is no deadline. There is no deadline. So you can't miss the deadline because there is no deadline. You can come into the ministry or go into the ministry, go into our district offices and make a request for payment once you're a farmer, and your request will be considered. Okay, so there is no deadline.
I also want to add that some farmers might be anxious. Of course, we're dealing with a government budget, and there comes to a point, of course, that we're preparing for budget 2025. So there must be a cutoff point. And in fact, we're looking at the 30th of November as the cutoff point so that whatever claims to be processed should be processed before the Christmas holidays, so persons would get that payment. But certainly, we have budgeted to continue the program next year, and those who did not get assessed would be assessed, and we'll provide that support.
Thank you so much, Ms. Paul, and thank you to the team at the Ministry of Agriculture. At this point, we want to take a break, but before we take the break, I'm just going to give the Minister an opportunity to make closing remarks as we prepare to distribute some checks to our farmers tomorrow. Minister.
Right, so in closing, I want to once again encourage all the farmers who want to receive checks. Please be there early, half an hour before the time stated, so that the arrangements can be made to have the process of distribution takes place quite easily. Okay, so thank you very much.
Just repeat the time.
So maybe I should, let me just repeat the times again for you. So for farmers at the Northern District, remember it is tomorrow, good? That is at Plains District Office at 10 o'clock, 10 a.m. And Ministers Andal and Cornwall will be there. In St. Andrew, again, it is 10 a.m. at the agricultural station in Grenville. Ministers David Andrew, Delma and Gloria Thomas, and the one who now speaks, myself, will be there. In St. David's, our Prime Minister, our dear Prime Minister, will be there from 8 a.m. to distribute the checks. And on the western side, in Black Bay, St. John, Ministers Andy Williams, Ron Redhead, Philip Telesford, Kieran James, and Claudia Jubis, they will be there to distribute checks from 9 a.m. So we kindly asking all farmers to be present 30 minutes before the distribution time to make the process seamless and easy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister, and thank you to the team of the Ministry of Agriculture. I want to say special thanks to Mr. Rennie, the Chief Fisheries Officer, PS Isaac Bagwan, and Dr. Cummins. Thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you to our Minister for Agriculture, the Honorable Lennox Andrews. We take a quick break as we prepare for our next presentation, which will be done by our Permanent Secretary within the Department of Public Administration. Following her presentation on pension reform, we'll have our dear Prime Minister, the Honorable Deacon Mitchell, who will present on infrastructure updates to you. So we resume with a quick break, after the quick break. Thanks.
Hi, we're here at 𝐅𝐎𝐂𝐔𝐒 Grenada Limited, a proud sponsor of Christmas with GBN. And this year, we're giving up to 40% off various items.
And customers actually have the opportunity to win up to $1,000 cash. So we encourage you to stay tuned to Christmas with GBN and look out for all other in-store promotions and product information.
And don't forget, this December, a night of shopping with 𝐼𝐶𝐂𝐔𝐒.
Proud sponsors of Christmas with GBN includes Ace Hardware, Hubbard's, Flow, Grenada Duty Free, and 𝐼𝐶𝐂𝐔𝐒.
Welcome back. This is our post-cabinet press conference for today, Wednesday, October 16th. We now move to a presentation by a Permanent Secretary within the Ministry of Public Administration, PS Lindonna Hilaire Marshall.
Thank you very much, Ms. Etienne, and pleasant good morning to our Prime Minister and to our people in the room and all our listeners online. We are happy to be here to share with you on the reform initiatives from the Department of Public Administration. We at the Department of Public Administration subscribe to the notion that the secret to change is focus. We want not to be fighting what is old, but we want to work together with all our stakeholders to build on what is new. And given the fact that our slate of programs for this year involves some element of change, we thought we should highlight this as our notion and encourage our stakeholders to be on board with us as we seek to build on what is new. I want all viewers to take a close look at this picture, and I want you to determine what analogy you can deduce from this picture. And I'll give you just a brief moment to do that. My question to you would be, what will eventually happen to the boat? Regardless of the analogy that you drew, what would eventually happen to the boat? From our perspective, the analogy we drew is with that of the public service. So for us, the gentleman sitting at the back, I usually say the back, is that the back or the front? The front. The front, okay. The gentleman sitting at the front of the boat in the purple, For us, he represents the public officers who are secured, the people who have no issues with their pension, their job is secured. And we also think it represents the private sector workers who believe that this has nothing to do with them, and so they have nothing to worry about when it comes to this situation. When we look at the choppy waters, for us, this choppy waters represents the current situation with some of our public officers in the public service that are experiencing low morale as a result of the disparity with pay, terms and conditions of engagement, and the dysfunctional performance management system that we are experiencing. The other gentleman sitting next to the satisfied and, well, we wouldn't want to say unconcerned, but the public officers and the private sector workers who figure there's nothing for them to do. For us, he represents the policymakers. And these are the ones who you notice he take a little step forward, and he's taking a dim look at things because he's trying to decide what are the decisions that I need to make. So him representing the policymakers, the cabinet, the people who have the administrative functions to perform, the DPA, the PSC, and our senior managers board. When we look at the two gentlemen at the back, they are the ones making all the noise. We notice these are the unestablished public officers who are not eligible for pension. They are the ones who are not secured with their tenure. And these are the ones who are crying out and asking what can be done to make things different for me. And they're all sitting in this boat called the public service. The question is, what will eventually happen to this boat if the ones who are at the back or the front, or we call it, do not do anything? If our policymakers do not do anything, what will eventually happen to this boat? And oftentimes we hear the answer, the boat would sink. And obviously, if that boat sinks, it affects all of us, not just the public officers, not just the policymakers, not just the ones at the front or the back crying out for us to hear them in terms of what should be changed with regards to the job security, but all of us as Grenadians will be affected if that boat sinks. And as we went through our reform initiatives, we've looked at the situation, and of course we would examine what's obtained so that we can determine how we move forward. So from our situation analysis, we recognize that we are running a parallel public service where approximately 3,672 employees are not eligible for any form of pension. We do have 904 persons who are eligible for an ex gratia payment, and then we have 4,000 plus who are eligible for the current pension. But 3,672 people are not eligible for any form of pension after their tenure in the public service. And our desire is to see that the public service officers who, at the end of their tenure, will be able to receive some sort of benefits after their work. Another situation that we took close attention to is at the end of each year, sometimes in cases where people work as long as 20 years, at the end of their tenure, all they receive is a thank you letter from the government of Grenada. We would like to see that change, and we would like to see employees exiting the system receiving a retirement benefit to support a more comfortable life at the end of their tenure. The current pension, as it's designed now, when it was designed 60 years ago, we know it only catered for approximately 200 people. In 1993, when the NIS was introduced, the pension was stopped. And simply that was because at that time, I believe it was understood that the pension could not have continued as it was. So it was stopped, and then nobody received pension for approximately 38 years until it was restored in 2022, where we see approximately over 4,000 people being eligible for the pension. Our desire is to see that we have a pension system that not just caters for the established staff, but also for all public service employees at the end of their tenure. So in examining the situation, our question became, what can we do to move from our current state to our desired state? And for us, it was about these three major reform initiatives: the regularization exercise, the reforming of the pension, and the introduction of an integrated performance management system in the public service. And we will speak a little bit about three of them briefly so that we understand where we are at with all three. When we speak about regularization, we often like for all of us to be on the same page. And for the purpose of this exercise, we always make the point that regularization does not mean moving all our workers wholesale from the unestablished to the established without any form of review or assessment. So we always like people to get that point extremely clear. Regularization, for us, according to the approved regularization framework, it refers to the process of correcting the anomalies in the terms and conditions of engagement of workers in the public service. And for us to get a better sense as to where we are now, it's important for us to step back a bit. And as we step back, we want to reflect on a few, probably about 10 years or so back, when the economic state in Grenada was at an all-time low. And we saw a decline in all of the major sectors: the construction, the tourism, foreign direct investments, grants, and even revenue. All of it was low. And when we reviewed the assessment that was done at the time, for every dollar that was spent, 70 cents went towards wages and pension, and 30 cents went towards paying debt. What does that leave us? It left us with no money for capital expenditure. And a country who is not expending any monies in capital expenditure, we know there's zero growth. And so the economy is going to be at a standstill. That led us to engage the IMF. And with that engagement, Grenada was able to secure a 3-year extended credit, and that aimed to foster fiscal stability in the country. And the IMF recommended structural and economic adjustments, and hence that gave rise to what we knew as the Homegrown Structural Adjustment Program, which ran from 2014 to 2016. That program had 3 pillars. It sought to look at the structural reforms for growth and job creation. It looked at the administrative reforms, and this is where the fiscal stability concerns was addressed, and it also looked at debt restructuring. A critical part of the administrative reforms dealt with wage bill management, and hence we saw the need for the FRL, which put a cap on wage bill at a 9%, and we saw the attrition policy being introduced. The attrition policy guided the implementation of strict attrition measures across the public service, and that is where we experienced the fact that for every 10 exits in the public service, we were only able to fill 7. Sorry, we were only able to fill 3. The opposite way. So for every 10, we were able to fill 3. So it means that we lost 7. And these replacements were determined by the type of the positions and how critical these positions were to driving the strategic agenda for the ministries and the departments. To maintain fiscal discipline and not to inflate the wage bill, and also to still meet some of the service requirements at the time, we engaged using various instruments. And that we see that brought us to where we are today with the parallel public service. We have the established and we have the unestablished. And with that resulted in the insecurity of tenure, the pay and vacation inequity, professional immobility and all those sort of things that negatively affect some of our workers. For us, we thought this must be done systematically, and so we developed a framework, and the approach sought that we should take this thing step by step. And we've explained that the regularization would be done in 3 phases. The first phase only looked at the acting, people temporary, people on assignments, and people who are on probation. And yes, we anticipated, our aim was to cover all these category of workers in 2023. And we understand that things don't always go as planned. So of course in 2023 we weren't able to cover everybody, but the good thing about the framework, the phases are not prerequisite. So phase 1 don't need to finish for phase 2 to start, and phase 2 don't need to finish for phase 3 to start. So we were able to continue with phase 2 even if we weren't completely finished with phase 1. But as we progressed, we were able to iron out some of the feeding problems that we had in phase 1, and we were able to regularize more than the targeted 300 people in the first phase. We are happy to know that 404 positions were regularized in the first phase thus far. And as we continue this year, 2024, the anticipated number of people that we would look to address would be 1,262. And as we move to phase 3 in 2025, the bulk of the people, 3,316, which include the Imani workers. A critical part to the regularization exercise, a measure that would help us to further strengthen the reforms initiatives and to look at the longer-term benefit and well-being of our public officers, is that of pension reform. And when we thought of pension reform, we basically examined 3 options. The first option would be to maintain the current pension obligations as it is by engaging employees on contract. The consequence of that is we would just continue running a parallel public service where some workers are eligible for pension and some are not. We may even say we can consider simply just meeting the short-term need to meet the security of tenure and offer all these people an open-ended letter. That would cover the security of tenure. However, that will not meet the longer-term employee well-being that we want to see. So we thought this is not a very good option. The second option considered was to significantly increase the government's pension obligation. Of course, if we do that, we are only squeezing ourselves further, and we may even get back to where we were, where most of the money was being spent on wages and pensions, and will not allow us to have sufficient funds to spend on investment to support the economic growth for the country. The third option was to reform pension and to seek how we can find that balance between government's obligation for sustainable compensation management and the need for us to meet the well-being of our employees by ensuring that there is some form of benefit at the end of their tenure. Throughout all of this, we maintained there was need for compromise. We have 2 key players: the government, who is concerned about sustainability and affordability and its obligation to sustainable compensation management. And we have our public officers, some of whom are concerned about the years of service. I've been working for 15, 20 years. Now there's a new pension. What happens to my years? And we have some people who are concerned about the age. I'm already 45, 50. We bring in a new plan now where I have to contribute. How is that going to affect me? Throughout the process, we've had a series of engagements, and we've heard the concerns by the stakeholders, and we've taken all of their concerns into consideration as we developed this new pension plan. So I would walk you through briefly the key features of the new pension plan. The new pension plan is a defined contribution pension plan. By that I mean, participants, employees, are required to contribute a percentage, while the government would match the percentage that they're going to be contributing. The plan is a multi-employer plan, and by that I mean the plan is long-term and forward-thinking. It caters for employers outside of the government. While the government would be the main employer, it can also support, for example, the statutory bodies who do not have a plan and is interested in securing pension benefits for its employees. And even further, down the road, if we do have some small businesses who cannot afford to have a pension plan for the employees, we may have some people like the farmers, the fishermen, who also would need to have some sort of security of tenure after they finish working. And we know the NIS is not sufficient in its current amount that is being disseminated to workers at the end of their tenure. The other feature of the plan is that it is the contribution rates are going to be matched, as I said. So the government would pay 3%, and the employee would pay 3% for people who are earning under the current NIS threshold. People who are earning above, the government would pay 3% on the amount below, but 6% on the difference above. So 3 and 6, and the government would match it, 3 and 6. The plan, there is going to be room for voluntary contributions. We do have the provision for people who are on the establishment, and mind you, just to reiterate the fact that this new plan does not affect the current people on the establishment. It's only people who do not have any pension plan in place it's going to be for. But if there are people who are on the establishment and are willing and able to make voluntary contributions, the plan will accommodate that as well. The participation in the plan is mandatory. Once you are a public service employee and the plan is in place, everybody will be required to participate in the plan. For the statutory bodies, the upfront decision to participate in a plan is voluntary. So for the organization, they can decide whether or not they move from where they are to the plan. Once they make that decision, then the employees at the statutory bodies, it will be mandatory for them to participate. In terms of vesting period, the vesting period for this plan is 5 years. So by that we mean after you work for 5 years, you can have access, well, the funds that are in your account will be attributary to you. While you cannot take it, but it is going to be accumulated in your name so that when you reach retirement age, you will be able to have access to the funds after 5 years. The difference between that and what obtains now is that even if you work for 10 years now and you decide to go, you're still not able to get anything from that plan. So this one, it is vested after 5 years. The retirement age for this plan is the age that the institution is under at the time. So for us in the public service, our retirement age is 60. For some of the statutory bodies, their retirement age is 65. So whatever your HR policy is for your retirement age, that is what would be obtained for you under this plan. The benefit provisions, like with the other plan, people can have the option to take 25% upfront and the rest over a period of time. We do have provisions for early exit as well. People can take 50% of their earnings. So, for example, someone wants to move on and start their own business, and they may have need for capital. They can have access to 50% of the funds that are in their name so that they can move on to do such. Past service credit is a key thing that we've heard a lot about in the consultations. People, as we did mention, are concerned about their years of service and how is that going to be affected. We're happy to see that the government did approve the consideration for past service credit. So your years of service will be considered in your calculations for the pension. The plan will be administered by an external expert, and we are making provisions to secure such entity. The investment management will also be secured externally. And the plan will also be managed through a board, which will be reporting to the Parliament as opposed to the Cabinet. And that too was a concern raised in the consultations, and we have been able to secure that decision that the board will report to Parliament as opposed to Cabinet. To support all of this initiatives, the regularization and the pension, we understand that there is need for us to manage our performance in the public service. Hence, along with the regularization and the pension reform, we are also working towards the implementation of an integrated performance management system. And this integrated performance management system is developed on the public service values. It is mindful of the fact that the Grenada Public Service is committed to upholding the highest ethical standards while promoting equity, inclusion, and respect for all as we embrace innovation, manage change, and collaborate with stakeholders to continuously improve our responsiveness and professionalism while remaining dedicated to the well-being and advancement of our employees and the people that we serve as public officers. So the purpose of the integrated performance management system is really to help improve the overall effectiveness of the public service by reshaping our culture. And we do know culture is not something that is easy to shape, but we believe with consistency over time, we will be able to see a change in our culture. It is designed to align the government's articulated policies to the individual work plans and also to provide clarity on what employees are expected to achieve and how they are expected to behave. The main features of the of the integrated performance management system, it will focus on the key result areas, and those key result areas will cascade all the way from the top down to the bottom. So from the Prime Minister all the way down to our cleaners are going to be subject to the integrated performance management system. The competencies are something we also are going to pay key attention to. The personal development planning, we don't want to leave anybody behind. So anybody who are struggling, who are not meeting their deadlines, who are not meeting their task, are going to be subject to a development plan and the award and recognition program that will form part of the plan. So as I conclude, I just think we need to remind ourselves as even if we are not established public officers, even if we are not even public officers, we are all Grenadians, and at the end of the day, we have a part to play in our nation building, and everything that we do affects not just this generation, but our generations to come, and so we need to all put all hands on deck to support what we do. And as we do so, we want to remind ourselves of the fact that the secret to change is really focus. We want not to be fighting what is old, but we need to work together to build on what is new.
Thank you so much, Permanent Secretary within the Department of Public Administration, Mrs. Lindona Hilaire Marshall. Thank you so much for your thorough presentation. I don't see any hands at this point, but with your permission, Prime Minister, if we have any questions, we could take one or two at this point, and then we close with your presentation and with your updates on ministry from the Ministry of Infrastructure. Questions?
Marshall, I want to ask you a question based on from the union's perspective. There is a concern by the union that some public officers will now have to pay the additional 3% of from the salaries, which they are seen as a loss. What do you say to that?
I would say we encourage people to see the glass half full as opposed to half empty. So 3% is not a loss. You put in 3%, the government is matching it with 3. 3 and 3 is 6. So at the end of the day, you still end up with 6. And even if you subtract the 3 that you put, you still end up with 3. So I can't see how that could ever be a loss. So we're encouraging people to see it as half full and not supposed to half empty. It's not about you losing anything. That 3% that you put forward is an investment for your future tomorrow. So we can't see that as a loss in any way. In fact, we see it as a gain because they are going to be gaining 3% that the government would be matching.
And based on your pronouncements, is there representation from the union on the Pension Reform Committee? And if not, why?
Okay. Unfortunately, no. There is no representation on the Pension Reform Committee by the unions. I would say because the unions refused to participate in the exercise. The invitation went out to the TUC, which is the umbrella body for the union, to identify someone to be on the committee, and we've had no response to that. We've made other attempts to get their involvement, and we've engaged them separately. Some of them did attend the sessions, some didn't, but we continue to do as much as we can to involve them in every way. We've sent all the documentations to them. We've invited them to all of the consultations. We've had one-on-one with some of them, as I said. But to date, we have not had the commitment to have anybody sit on the committee.
Thank you, Sherry-Ann. Rena, you have a question?
Sorry, before go ahead. I want to re-emphasize something because we have to deal with the reality. This pension plan is going to be applicable to 3,000 plus persons who do not have a pension. So if they leave the service now, whether it's on retirement age or whether they've worked for 10 or 15 years, they get nothing. So what the government is seeking to do is to give them a pension plan. And the government is contributing 3%, and we're asking them to contribute 3%. So that 3% is their money. The only issue is that we are simply saying, as opposed to spending all of it now, we are incentivizing you to save 3% of it, and we are matching an additional 3%. And to be clear, for all of the years that you've been working that you do not currently have a pension plan for, so that if you were leaving tomorrow, you will get nothing when you walk out, we are actually paying a past service contribution on the commencement of the pension plan. As in, we are going to fund a certain percentage to recognize the fact that you've already worked for whatever period of time with no payments going towards your pension. So I want to emphasize this. This is gain, 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 because currently you have nothing. If you leave now, you get nothing. If you work until you retire, you get nothing. And we're saying that, you see the numbers. We're not talking 5 people here. We are talking 3,600 plus persons who currently face this situation. And so we also have to talk about sustainability. The PS provided a background as to where Grenada found itself and why it was forced to go into structural adjustment and take all of the painful policies it had to take because the management of the government's finances was not being done prudently. And so we cannot go back to a system where the pension is completely funded by the government, i.e. taxpayers, with no contribution from the employees. Such a plan will simply not be sustainable. And if we did it 5-10 years from now, we'll be right back where we currently are. Because the situation we're in has arisen by the fact that essentially we had an unsustainable human resource finance management policy in place, which saw 70% of our money going towards wages and salaries, and the rest going towards financing debt. I still want to repeat the call made by the PS. Very early, the department wrote to the Trade Unions Council, inviting them to take part in this process. They have never done so. Notwithstanding that, we will continue to engage with them, whether it's individually or collectively, if they want to do so. The consultant has been on island repeatedly throughout this process, and there's been several engagements, and we have no difficulty in addressing that. The PS didn't say this, but I'm going to say it. The Public Workers Union went to the lawyers who wrote the government. We've since responded to that letter. And even in that letter, although what was contained in the letter was hogwash, we have still indicated to them we are ready to meet, and we proposed the date of 30th October. But I want to make it clear, we are committed to doing this. We are committed to making sure that we do not leave the current generation of workers who do not have a pension to find themselves 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now retiring with no pension in place. It will not be good for them. They will retire into poverty, as many people have been doing over the last several years. It is still going to be the government and taxpayers they're going to be running to for some kind of social safety net or social protection. And so we are committed to ensuring this happens. And I'll make the final point. This pension is not impacting the 4,000 plus public servants who currently fall under the existing pension scheme for pensions when they retire. So you have to appreciate the kind of burden the government is undertaking by seeking to keep in place the existing pension for established public servants and at the same time create another pension for another 3,600 plus and counting persons. That is what we are seeking to do, and we are committed to do it. And we would hope that those who say they champion the rights of working class and working people will in fact take part in the process to help shape the outcome, which is by any yardstick an improvement on the current circumstances that the 3,600 plus workers find themselves in. So I just wanted to make that point. Thank you.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Rina, you have one question, and then I see a hand from Melinda with one question, and then we move to Prime Minister for some updates. Go ahead.
I have two questions. Just to piggyback on what was said, the PW president would have said recently that stakeholders meeting held has been more of a dictation than a conversation. Can you comment on this?
I am not in a position to determine someone's understanding of a situation, but I would assume that if I invite you to a meeting to discuss a matter, I share with you the documentation and I share with you my views and allow you to share your views, that to me is a discussion and a consultation. I can't see that as being dictatorial in any way at all. So usually that's what the format is. We send you the documentation, we invite you to a discussion, we come to the discussion, we share our views and we allow you to share yours. And even thereafter, we always say, we don't expect people to know and think of everything in the room. If you think of something outside of the room, sometimes even in the shower, you might come up with something. We give you the opportunity to call, send us an email, visit again, so that we can further discuss what it is you did not think about while you're in the room. So I don't share his view that it was dictatorial at all.
My final question, well, I would like more, but that's okay. My final question, Prime Minister, is directed to you because I don't think the PS will be able to answer this. Yesterday we were previewed to a contract by a nurse. That's it's basically saying that that worker has to sign the contract, which retroactively dates, I think it's 2020 to 2020 or 2022 to 2024, stating that his salary is 45,000 annually, when in reality their salary is 30,000 annually. Can you tell me the rationality behind that and what's the resolution?
Well, I think that's a question I can't answer. I haven't seen the contract. I don't think the PS has seen the contract. I don't know who the nurse is. I can't, and I'm taking what you say at face value. I can't even see the veracity of the document. So it's not even something I could speak to, and it doesn't seem to make any sense to me.
Yeah, what I can tell you, we've had people, from the functional review, we noticed a number of people had no instruments. So there was no coverage at all. So in order to give them the comfort that they were seeking, we gave coverage. So for example, somebody who worked without an instrument for 5 years, we would give you a cover for the 5 years. But it has nothing to do with change in salary in terms of you, on the contract, there's more than what you receive. Would you agree to receiving a contract that says more and you're actually paid less without asking a question? I can't see anybody holding a contract in their hand for 40,000 and you're receiving 30. That doesn't make any sense to us at all. But we would, if that is the case, then we would love to see it and remedy whatever the situation is. But that is not something that we have been encouraging at all. Yeah, we've been given the blanket coverage just to secure the time, because some people feel that they need to have their times covered, but that has nothing to do with us.
And for clarity, when you say covered, you mean documented?
Yeah, documented coverage. Yes. Because they had nothing. They had no contract, no letter, no nothing. There are still a number of people in the service without any instruments. So as we go through the functional review and we come across these situations, we are offering the coverage, because some people just want to make sure they have something in their hand, especially now with the new pension, that they can cover for the past service credit.
Okay, thank you. We have two more questions on this matter, and then we move to the Prime Minister, who will give some updates from the Ministry of Infrastructure. So I see Ms. Paul, your hand is up, and Linda Straker, you follow after Ms. Paul.
Thank you very much. Hello again, everyone. Nisha Paul, freelance journalist. Just a point of clarity for PS, for the PS and DPA. Are we saying that the persons who are now coming onto the new pension plan would have to work for 5 more years before they become eligible to access the funds, like to say to move on or do whatever they need to do? And as it relates to the consultants, how are things progressing with getting the consultants here, given that it was previously stated that the plan will take effect as of October 1st? Thank you.
Okay. All right. So the vested period we did say is 5 years. So we're not expecting people who've been working for 20 years to come work an additional 5 years to be vested. We're just saying if it's for new entrants as well. So anybody starting as of the new date that the plan would be, you would have to work 5 years to be fully vested. Okay? And in terms of the consultant coming back here, we've had him here for probably about 3 or 4 times. I'm not sure if we necessarily need him to be back here for us to progress with the rest of the stuff that needs to be done to have the plan instituted.
Pierce, can you just clarify when you say to have the plan vested, what you mean by that?
Vested period meaning that you must secure a number of years for you to have access to both the funds that the government contribute on your behalf and you contribute. So before the 5 years, you could only have access to your 3%. Vested fully vested meaning the 3 plus the 3 would be in your account. It does not mean that you can leave with it now, but it means that it's going to stay in your account until your retirement. You can move it because the plan is flexible enough to allow you to move from one plan to the other. So if you move from the public sector to the private sector has a secured plan, you can move with that funds to the private sector.
Thank you, PS. And final question under the pension and PS's presentation from Linda Straker, and then we move to the Minister for Infrastructure.
Good morning again, and thank you. With my question on pension, the government has found itself in that situation because of what was done in 1983 with the Disqualification and Pension Act that was officially endorsed by the Democratic government in 1985. Fast forward to 2022 when a court declared that that move was unconstitutional. And as a result, retroactive had to be paid, and a number of former public officers who were appointed as established workers now has to be put on the pension payment of government. Can Ms. Hilaire or the Prime Minister say to us whether or not the Public Service Commission will now cease to appoint persons to establish positions so that in the future, as of the year that this new pension gets enacted, they would not have to be compensated under the government, what is required in the Constitution? And my other question attached to that, does the government has any plans?
Journalist Straker, if you can hold, because your preamble was very long. And I want to make sure I understand the question, so I'll try and answer the question, and then I'll try and deal with your preamble. The government hasn't found itself in this situation because of the Pension Disqualification Act. The government has found itself in this situation because, as provided by the context, the past governments found themselves in a situation where 70% of each dollar collected by the government was being spent on wages, salaries, pensions, and other employee-type benefits, the other 30% on debt. Past administrations, and in particular the new national administration, took the position, in addition to having to deal with the structural adjustment program, to employ people without giving them pensions. In other words, employ them and not put them on quote-unquote the establishment, simply because they would not be able to meet the requirements and the conditions set out by the IMF, etc. So hence they had to do a number of things. Attrition policy, hire people under all kinds of schemes, not giving them instruments, contract for service, contract of service, etc. And so yes, we are now in a position where you have thousands of persons who do not get any pensions. That's the reality. The court judgment simply applied to established public officers who were not being paid a pension pursuant to the government's view of the Pension Disqualification Act. This pension does not apply to them because currently the law for established public servants guarantees the pension pursuant to the various pension acts, whether it's police, prisons, etc. As part of the pension reform, and to ensure sustainability, and to ensure that we do not find ourselves in a position that we've been in again because of the actual size of the public service, which when you add the 4,000 plus the 3,000, it's almost 8,000 or 9,000 persons. Going forward, if a new person is hired in the public service, when this Pension Act comes into being, it is this Pension Act that will apply to them. That is the only way in which we will be able to sustain a pension scheme and to be able to manage prudently the government's ability to sustain wages, salaries, and other benefits for employees. So to answer your question, yes, once this Pension Act comes into effect, new hires under the public service for pension purposes will be for this particular pension scheme.
Thank you, Prime Minister, for your response. Linda, I hope that answers your next question.
Did not, but because my other question was whether or not we are going to have constitutional reform, because that court order was based on constitutional right.
For established...
Are we going to remove that right for established workers? Because my question...
So can I answer the question? The persons who currently do not have pensions are not established workers. They are not. And there is nothing in law that says the government must hire people on the basis of established positions or posts. Only the government is free to contract on any basis with persons, including the very basis that they've been contracting with them now, contract of service, contract for service, masking them as Imani trainees when they're employees, having people work with no documentation of the fact that they're your employee. We can go on and on. That is not unconstitutional. What we are saying is policy-wise, it is harmful. It is not financially sustainable for the employees because they have no indefinite employment. They are able to leverage their employment to go to banks and financial institutions to be able to use the proceeds of their work and their salaries to help themselves, to educate themselves, to get loans, etc. So these are policy issues. And this government will not pursue inherited policies which continue to impoverish people who work. And hence the reason why we are committed to this pension reform.
Right. Thank you, Prime Minister, for your response. Thank you, Linda. We need to move on to some updates from the Ministry of Infrastructure. And I now invite our Prime Minister, who is also the Minister for Infrastructure, to make his make his presentation and give you those updates. Prime Minister.
Thank you again, Press Secretary. Well, my updates will span not just the Ministry of Infrastructure, but other important announcements as well for the government. So I will just simply reiterate that October 19th, 2024 is a public holiday. It's styled National Heroes Day. You will recall that last year, for the first time since 1983, October 19th was declared a public holiday and styled National Heroes Day. I think every Grenadian understands the significance of October 19th and the tragic events which unfolded at then Fort Rupert, now renamed Fort George. This year, the commemorative activity will take place at Progress Park, and it will start at 9:30. Our featured speaker will be the Honorable Ralph Gonzalez, Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, who will deliver a key address. Many of you may know that Prime Minister Gonzalez was intimately involved in the affairs of Grenada during the period of 1979 to 1983, I knew Morris Bishop and many members of the government personally. So we thought it quite fitting to have someone who had intimate knowledge of the challenges, the progress, the successes of that period, to be able to deliver feature remarks to us, as well as to point to some of the lessons that we all need to pay attention to coming out of this period. I want to reiterate, October 19th, National Heroes Day, is not a festival, and it's not a time for festivities. This is a time for sober, serious, and respectful commemoration. As a result, no permits for the playing of amplified music in public spaces will be granted. I'm aware that some have regrettably been granted already, unfortunately, and they are going to be cancelled. I will obviously apologize for any inconvenience caused to those who would have received those permits already, but we indicated since last year that this was going to be our position, and for the record, we intend to legislate this as well and put it into more permanent and legal form as we begin to firm up the framework around National Heroes Day. So we intend to take to Parliament legislation to make sure that the date is properly styled as National Heroes Day, legislation to set out the criteria for selecting our national heroes, legislation to say what our national heroes, whether they are alive or whether they are deceased, would be entitled to, how they would be known, and what other benefits they or their families may get from the state surrounding this event. So we want to again invite everyone to come out and join us as we mark this solemn occasion on the 19th of October at Progress Park at 9:30 a.m. The second announcement I want to move to is to indicate that we will be reading the budget in 2025, either in January or February of 2025, and not November or December as is customary. And so I'm just making that announcement now that the actual reading of the budget will take place in January or February of 2025 and not in November or December of 2024. I'm sure you could appreciate a number of reasons why we've taken that decision, starting first of all with the significant disruption caused by Hurricane Beryl. Second, we only recently passed a supplemental budget which also includes addressing Hurricane Beryl. We've had to take a number of actions, including suspending some parts of the Fiscal Resilience Act. We have also triggered clauses in our debt instruments asking for the suspension of our debt payments to facilitate addressing Hurricane Beryl. And more crucially, in light of the disruption caused by Hurricane Beryl, we want to make sure that adequate time is given to our stakeholders, is given to our citizens to have more direct and meaningful engagement in the budget consultation process, so that coming out of that process, we can have greater input in the policies, programs, and initiatives that we will adopt in 2025 and beyond, to more accurately reflect the wishes, desires, and ambitions of our citizens. So I just want to put that notice out early so that our citizens are aware of it, and we believe it will give us more opportunity to have deeper and more meaningful, as well as more extensive engagement with our citizens and stakeholders as we prepare the budget. I want to quickly move to some updates on the three major road infrastructure projects that are taking place. I will start with Molineux Road and will indicate, because I saw what perhaps was a misstatement of fact. The road in Molineux will be open in November. The bridge is completed and the concrete slabs have been built. I actually drove over the road myself on Monday afternoon on my way to St. Patrick. The contractors are completing the work before the bridge in terms of the base coast materials to compact the road, and therefore once that is done and the road is asphalted, the public will have access to the road, and we will expect persons to be able to drive over the road in November. I repeat, as it stands now, you can in fact drive over the bridge. You may have a little inconvenience in having your car dirtied a little by the base coast material that is before the bridge on either side, but the road will be completed in November. So I want to point that out, because I think I saw clips from a television program on Monday night that suggested that the presenter was saying the road will not be opened in November. I'm not so sure what basis that was used for. So that we expect to happen. I just want to point out there is still rock soil stabilization work to be done upslope and downslope, because a lot of the material that is downslope is materials that was simply cut off from the hill and dumped at the bottom, and obviously we have the sea at the bottom. So we will engage in ensuring that we can take the necessary steps to make sure that the upslope is stabilized, as well as the downslope. So that's the outstanding part of the work that will have to continue, but that will not in any way impact the access, vehicular access or pedestrian access to the road come November. Work in True Blue is also ongoing, and we expect that by latest this will be completed in the first quarter of 2025, because we're seeking not only to do what would be the main thoroughfare in True Blue, but there are also some back roads there that have not been attended to in the last 40 or 50 years, and we're seeking to have that done. And I want to point that out because that is road infrastructure that has sat in pretty much the same state for the last 4 decades. The road, I believe, was built when Uncle Gary had Expo, and since then no significant work has been done on the road, and I don't need to point to it that there are major businesses, including hotels, including St. George's University, and a number of restaurants and so on, as well as significant residences in the area. The Woburn Cliff Road work is also continuing there, and we expect that by the end of 2025, the road there will be completed. I want to highlight that from a planning perspective, from Point Salines all the way to the Carnage, we intend to resurface the Grandlands Main Road. We have not been able to move as aggressively as we would like on this because of the Southern Water program, which involves obviously laying pipelines from the Sendell Tunnel all the way down to Point Salines, which means the road is going to have to be trenched and the pipes are going to have to be laid. And we're also in discussions with GreenLink to see whether it is possible, because we want to dig once, to see whether as part of addressing our resilience to hurricanes and our transmission and distribution lines, whether parts of GreenLink's transmission and distribution lines could potentially go underground as well. So we don't want to obviously resurface the road, do the civil works, put in the sidewalks, improve the drainage and the culverts, and then 2 months later we are digging up the road. So that is something obviously but we certainly intend to begin to address this in 2025. And similarly, we also intend to address from the Sugar Mill roundabout all the way to what is probably called the Stinky Bridge or the Bumpy Bridge, depending on your perspective of it, the road widening and the construction of sidewalks throughout Grandlands and the Montu Grandlands Valley area, Woodlands area, because it's a heavily built-up area with significant civilian population, and there are extensive periods of the road where there are no sidewalks and people are walking the road, and the road itself is not the widest road. So we certainly intend to expand the road and to build sidewalks, and this is a project that we will look to commence in 2025 into 2026. As I've indicated previously as well, we would also be addressing the area of the Western Main Road known as Mabuya, which has remained like this for almost, perhaps more than 2 decades now, and has not been addressed. And it leads to, again, people having to take detours up the West Coast. So every time you think you fixed one area of the main road on the Western Main Road, you then have to detour another area, and it makes the journey for our citizens on that side of the road particularly problematic. So we are hoping to be able to tackle Mabuya so that you can drive from St. George's to 𝐷 in the first instance without having to take detours into smaller and more dangerous roads. Finally, I want to highlight that the work on Fort George continues. We are hoping in earnest that for the most part that it could be wrapped up by the first quarter of next year. As you are aware, the moving of the police headquarters is critical to that, and we believe that we are close enough to have that happen by the end of the year. Work on what was the floor building, which the government acquired on the Carnage, is significantly advanced, and we are pressing and doing everything to make sure that the police can in fact begin to move, or at least transition by December, with the hope that they are fully occupying the building in January and February of 2026. We are also going to be retrofitting a building in Grenville that the government has agreed to rent to relocate the Grenville police station. The lease arrangements have been concluded, We are in the process of selecting contractors to do the retrofitting work, and once that is completed, again, we are hoping that by December, January, February, the officers at the Grenville Police Station can move. I'm pointing those things out because these are all things which have existed for several years. And while others are talking, we are ensuring that we are doing what is necessary to actually take action to make those things happen. There are a number of other police stations that need to be addressed. The Victoria Police Station, the St. David's Police Station, St. Paul's was addressed, and the police officers have been able to move back there. The Coast Guard base is in a terrible condition. As you know, there was a fire there before we got into office, and that is something that has to be addressed. So this is just some of the areas that we need to treat with. You're aware as well that the schools that were damaged by Hurricane Beryl on mainland Grenada are being repaired. And similarly, for 𝐷𝐿 and Petit Martinique, a number of the schools are being repaired as we speak as well. So that is ongoing infrastructure work that is taking place. I will quickly move to prison reform. We have a new acting commissioner of police. Commissioner of Prisons, sorry. He and a team, including the National Security Advisor, will be traveling to Barbados and St. Lucia to look at the new prisons. And I'm using new here because they're not that new, but certainly far newer than our prison, that have been constructed to also look at those prisons, look at the operations there, with a view to beginning to inform our policy on our search to find land and to build a new prison. Again, our prison has been the same prison for, well, all of Grenada's existence, really. And it simply is overcrowded. It is not suitable, and it is not fit for purpose, and we are going to do something about it. We are also going to be recruiting 35 new prison officers. We expect that process to start before the end of the year, and hopefully we can conclude early in 2026, because we need to be able to provide the necessary human resources support to the prison so that it could carry out its functions more effectively. In the interest of time, I will stop here, and I will take any questions that you may have pertaining to the matters I've raised. Thank you.
Thank you, Prime Minister, for those updates. We have some journalists who have questions at this time. I know Sherry-Ann has a question, and Rena, you also have a question. So we'll begin with those journalists in the space, and we move to Ms. Paul. I see a hand from her. Sherry-Ann.
PM, I just want to ask a bit in terms of, you mentioned about the different infrastructure works to be done on various roadways and so. You mentioned Molineux.
Yes.
Once Molineux is opened to regular vehicle traffic, will we be seeing any upgrades to the Montmorris and the Jones Road detour, and also the Molineux detour that is presently being used, that is in a certain state at this time? And I didn't hear you mention anything about 𝐅𝐻𝐒 Street, that bit of project there.
Yeah, so let me take 𝐅𝐻𝐒 Street as a contract was awarded to a contractor. I'm aware, in fact, that the work is not proceeding at the pace that we would want to expect, but there are things with construction that we have to appreciate. Grenada has a perennial cement shortage problem. And so sometimes once you're dealing with concrete works, as much as you want to go as quickly as you can, it's subject to things like that. So you have cement, and our sand is imported. And again, you have, it therefore means from time to time you simply don't have the aggregates that are required. And we have to bear in mind that basically, there is enormous demand for construction materials in Grenada, in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, in Jamaica, as a result of the passage of Hurricane Beryl. So there are challenges there. But I certainly would look back, I would look into how we can accelerate the process on 𝐅𝐻𝐒 Street. We are aware that, in a sense, the Montmorris Road has become the main road, and as a result, with the sheer number or quantity of traffic that it's had to endure, that there are areas where it has deteriorated. And I think just as part of the normal maintenance process for the western areas, that the road office in Bushaju would be able to tackle that issue.
Rena?
Prime Minister, I just wanted to ask regarding Fort George and the October 19th holiday. Normally, we would see wreaths being laid there by family members. Would any of that be, would the facility of Fort George be available for that sort of ceremony of a person to lay their wreath?
Right, well, we're seeking to make it available so that could happen, but obviously we have to make sure from a safety point of view that it's safe, because construction is going on. But certainly from the Ministry of Infrastructure perspective, we would do everything to facilitate the family members being able to do so.
Okay, can you give me an update as it relates to the Granitang? Persons were seeing work being done as it relates to the extension. They really want to know what is happening because nothing is happening now. We're not seeing any equipment. And also the Greater Grenville project. Anything on that?
The Grenville Commercial Project?
Yeah.
Yes, right. So I'll take the Grenville Commercial Project. We've had some delays because when we assumed office, the partnership between the government of Grenada and the Grenada Cooperative Bank in terms of what was envisaged as a PPP project became a little confusing, or I think the expectations of the bank and the government were not clear. At least what they thought had been agreed seemed to have changed leading into the elections. So we held discussions with the bank and we indicated that we were committed to the original concept, which was that the bank would be the developer of the project and that ultimately the bank would finance, supervise the construction, and that ultimately the bank and the government would become tenants in the property. So because of those, having to clarify those things, it has led to some delays on the project. The cabinet has reiterated recently in a meeting with the chairman of the bank that we are committed to the project. We want this to happen, and the bank itself has indicated it clearly wants it to happen. So we have indicated to the bank that we will confirm our position. There is a high probability that the designs will have to be redone. And that the project management, as in the entity that the bank selects to project manage, will have to be confirmed and agreed by us. And then obviously the next stage will be we'll have to go back to tender to get a contractor to build. Because the original contractor that I think the entity had selected was Quinn, and then subsequently the prior administration sought to change the contractor into another contractor, and then that created some discomfort, I think, from the bank's perspective, and so nothing happened. And I've had the sense I get is that because of the nature of construction and the fact that the costings for inputs change all the time, no contractor holds their bid for an extended period of time, going to 1 and 2 years. So as a result, the tendering process has to start again for the construction. But we are committed to ensuring that this happens because this is something that is actually needed in St. Andrew. And then the next. Granitang, right. So as you appreciate, we have quite a few narrow areas in Granitang, and we have comments trying to grade to widen some of those areas. Again, a lot of these issues go back to capacity. As I've indicated, the Ministry of Infrastructure itself is not yet in a position where it has its own equipment. And so our ability to mobilize and do these things ourselves quickly is significantly stymied, and so we have to rely on external parties to do so. But this is all part of our own internal attempt to just simply make our roadways, enhance our roadways, straighten if we can, widen if we can. And so this is something that's going to be ongoing. But sometimes the work will start, sometimes it will stop, because there are all kinds of factors that would impact. But we do intend to continue trying to widen the road and to use our asphalt crews and so on to be able to do some of that work on some of these projects, rather than having to always outsource it.
Thank you, PM, for your response. Ms. Paul, you have a question at this time? If you do, you can proceed, and then we'll close.
Thank you very much. I have a few questions for the Honorable Prime Minister. The first, can you provide an update on where we are with the new hospital project? And I also have a few questions as it relates to updates on the oil and gas status, the status, of the committee that was appointed by the government to look into the oil and gas issue, and the MNIB, the recommendations that are being considered. And then I have another question as it relates to the status of the FIU investigations into the money that went into the NNP bank accounts.
We need to ask the question. So let's go back. Your first question. Let's deal with the first issue, the first question you had.
Okay, so an update on the new hospital project.
The new hospital project. Thanks.
Yes, please.
All right, so the update I have is we are continuing with the planning for the new hospital. There are three things we're seeking to accomplish. First, we are seeking to ensure that we have an international partner that can partner with us on the new hospital project, and particularly when it comes to operating the project, managing and operating the hospital. The team that is leading that process would have received proposals from several international hospitals in the US and elsewhere. They would have gone through those proposals and would have selected Mount Sinai, which is based in New York, as the preferred candidate. And they've since entered negotiations and are currently in negotiations with them on this issue. Phase one of what we're seeking to do is to have consultancy services provided to us in relation to the existing hospital. And that includes doing a gap assessment or analysis of the existing hospital, what works, what doesn't work, and how we can improve that. So Mount Sinai, as we speak, is in Grenada right now. I think the team arrived on Monday. There might be as many as 12 persons who are interacting with hospital management, hospital staff over the next week as part of that assessment. And this will continue for a 90-day period, which will essentially take us to the end of the year or into January. And thereafter, we will have that report. That 90-day period gives us the opportunity to continue our discussions and negotiations with them for the long-term partnership that we seek. And the reason why we need this partner is because we want to ensure that our hospital, when it is built, well, let me back up. We want to ensure that our hospital, when it is designed and when it is built, is a world-class international hospital, and crucially, that the management and its operation and the clinical services that it provides are deserving and befitting of the citizens of Grenada and world travelers. So that is part of what we're doing. It therefore means there are a number of things happening simultaneously. In addition to speaking with Mount Sinai as a potential international operator for us in partnership, we are also working heavily on the business model for the hospital, identifying potential sources of funding and financing for the hospital, looking at potential EPC contractors that would have to actually construct and build a hospital. We are also looking at overall our manpower needs as currently exist and how we are going to fulfill the manpower needs by the time the hospital comes in. And so that would involve things like doing a proper assessment of our current manpower challenges, where the government will need to invest in nurses, doctors, lab techs, and all the support stuff that comes with that. So that is part of the ongoing process that we will need.
Thank you very much. And the status of the committee that was appointed to look into the oil and gas issue, as well as an update on where are we with the MNIB, consider the recommendations. I understand that the government is in possession of some recommendations. Can you provide an update on that? Thank you.
Right, thank you. So the oil and gas technical working group that has been appointed has been feverishly at work. As you'd appreciate, one of the challenges we faced was ensuring that we were satisfied that we had all of the documentation pertaining to this issue. And their work, therefore, has been ongoing. They have retained a legal consultant. They've also retained some technical consultants. And we have sought in recent times to engage with GPG. So there's been some exchanges of correspondence with them. We expect that in the coming months we will look to sit with them and get a clear understanding of their understanding of the current contractual obligations that they have to us and all contractual obligations that we have to them. I want to point to that GPG would have been awarded certain blocks, but there are other blocks within our territorial space that we need to also look at. But in order to do so, we need to make sure that we put the right legislative policy and financial regulations in place so that Grenadians can benefit, if at all, are there any hydrocarbon deposits of a commercial and exploitable nature within our waters. So what we are seeking to do is to make sure that when the technical working group comes back to Cabinet with recommendations, that the recommendations will be things that are clear, transparent, that we can indicate to the public what the process is, etc., etc. So it's a lot of rigorous, highly technical work, hence the reason for a technical working group, to be able to get us to the point where we can come back to the public to say this is what we found, this is what we understand the government's contractual obligations are, this is what we understand GPG's contractual obligations are, this is how we will expect to move forward. Or alternatively, if we can't move forward, then to be able to advise us that we can't move forward, and as a result, those are the steps we need to be able to take to address. So the work is ongoing. I would expect that we would probably have members of the technical working group come back to the media with a full briefing before the end of the year on the work it has done and the next steps in this process. In relation to the Marketing and National Importing Board, that technical working group has completed its report and has made recommendations to the Cabinet. We've since had some further discussions with them, and Cabinet has appointed a team to look at how we go about the process of actually finding a suitable investor to in fact partner with the government in relation to the Marketing National Importing Board, so that we can create a public-private partnership entity that will begin to fulfill the clear needs that has to be addressed when it comes to food, logistics, the linkages between farmers and markets, and those sort of things. So that work is also ongoing.
Right. Thank you, Nisha. We have two more journalists who wish to ask questions. So, Linda, I'll take you now for your question, and then Sherry Ann, you have the final question, and we wrap up for today. Linda, proceed.
Morning again, and thank you. To the Prime Minister, on October 7th, a press release was posted on your Facebook page informing the nation that you were going to a forum in Rwanda. However, Rwanda is on the east of Africa. However, we soon came to the realization that you were now on a visit to Nigeria. Can you explain to us why the nation was not informed that you will also be going to Nigeria? And further, can you say whether or not you use commercial aircraft or a private jet to get to Nigeria, and what is the role of Mr. Teddy St. Louis, who was seen in pictures with you in Nigeria?
All right, thank you. Well, Mr. Teddy St. Louis is in the room. He's been appointed as Chief of Staff for the Prime Minister, so that's his role. I left Grenada to travel both to Rwanda and Nigeria. When I arrived in the United Kingdom, after health alerts in relation to the Marburg outbreak, viral outbreak in Rwanda, the decision was made not to travel to Rwanda because of the potential risk associated with the outbreak and because of the challenges it may pose for further onward travel. I had intended to travel from Rwanda to Nigeria and then from Nigeria back to Grenada. As a result of the change in the travel plans, I would have stayed in the United Kingdom much longer, an extra day, and thereafter I would have traveled to Nigeria, and then from Nigeria I would have traveled back to Grenada. As far as I'm aware, I traveled, you asked whether I traveled commercial. I should just point this out so that we appreciate it, because I guess you want to know who took me to Nigeria. I flew to Nigeria from the United Kingdom, compliments Mr. Aliko Dangote, because obviously with the change in travel plans, I would not have been able to travel from Rwanda to Nigeria. So he offered to arrange for me to travel from the UK to Nigeria. So I flew to Nigeria, compliments Mr. Dangote, and then I flew from Nigeria to Grenada, compliments myself.
Thank you, Linda. We want to take one more question from our journalists in the room pertaining to our discussions this morning. So Sherry Ann and Rina, would you like to offer a final question? And then we close for today. Thank you so much.
PM, I'm just seeking a bit of clarity in terms of the pronouncement made as it results to October 19th in terms of playing of amplified songs and so. Will the recall be for a specific time on October 19th? Because I know there are a number of events, and as you mentioned, permissions have already been given. In particular, the opening of the football and so that has an activity that requires the amplified song. So I'm just trying to clarify if it's for a particular time on the 19th or...
Well, no, it was not meant to be for a particular time. It was meant to be for the 19th, and the 19th ends at midnight. So it was, the intent was to ensure that for the day of the 19th, including going into the night until midnight, that there's no amplified song. Yeah. And I just want to emphasize that, because we have to be careful that as a country we don't send the signal. Then it means public holidays, national holidays, which are meant to be symbolic of something, all gets squeezed into a party holiday. Almost all holidays at one point in time or another actually was meant to be reflective or symbolic of something, whether it's Christmas, whether it's the Easter holidays, and we can go on. A lot of them were Christian-based holidays. If we are going to be introducing national holidays that are meant to commemorate our national heroes and are meant to particularly mark the most tragic event in our national political psyche, partying and fetting And it's simply not something that is, in my view, consistent with that. And we need to be consistent in the approach we send. And that's why I'm saying I'm obviously going to apologize for any inconvenience that has been caused as a result of that, because we appreciate that. But since last year that was said, perhaps our citizens are not listening. And also it's unfortunate that it happened that permission was given by the 𝐅𝐎𝐂𝐒, because we would have communicated since last year our intent. But I guess perhaps people are used to people being inconsistent. And so they figure if you say it will be a solemn day, they probably expect the next day you'd forget and allow partying, and that's not the intent of this administration. So clearly we do appreciate that there's inconvenience, and I have no difficulty in apologizing for that. But that should not have happened, because we made it quite clear since last year that this was not the type of day, with the introduction of a new holiday, to simply treat it as any other day, when we know it holds so much painful and tragic memories for our citizens who still have not, in many instances, come to healing yet or closure on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Rena?
PM, you would have mentioned about Mount Sinai and their part playing in the new hospital. Can you tell me if government is considering to move the health sector into a statutory body, not to privatize it, but into a statutory body? And could you tell me what building the police will be moved to in Grenville, the building that is identified?
Right, so I guess the best way to describe the building would be the former MNIB building, right? And then the second issue, the government is, let me rephrase, you said health sector. So the government is considering whether it would be prudent to statutorize the hospital, not the health sector. Because obviously the health sector is far wider and more diverse than that. This is something that, in fact, in my case, was actually suggested by young doctors and other healthcare practitioners when we consulted and met with them, when I met with them sometime last year. And they've given a number of reasons for that recommendation. They've also cited other countries in the region in which it has done and it has helped to improve the level and delivery of services. And a part of it has to do with the fact that the public service is a one-shoes-fit-all type approach, which in many instances does not work for some of the very specific sectors that we have. But that is something that there would be obviously extensive consultations and discussions on. But ultimately, it is being considered, and we were happy to, in fact, have the suggestion come, certainly in my case, from those who are working in the hospital and who understand the challenges that they face, and who obviously also perhaps have the experience of knowing what happens elsewhere in other islands, which would have had similar health care challenges.
Thank you, sir.
My main concern is can the vulnerable persons, be able to afford, when it's turned to that statutory body, the policy that is being made, would vulnerable persons be able to afford the healthcare system by then?
So I'll answer this question. NOASA is a statutory body. Vulnerable people are able to afford water. Greener Solid Waste Management Authority is a statutory body. It collects garbage. Everybody pays via the environmental levy for the collection of garbage and so on. So one of the issues that we face with is that sometimes we spend a lot of money, but the impact and the outcome is low, and we have to find why. And oftentimes it is in the management and the delivery systems that we have that are not efficient. So it is not just about affordability. That's one. It's also about the quality of care. When you don't pay for things, freeness has a certain connotation to it, and that's part of the challenge we're facing here. Our healthcare sector is funded purely by taxpayers, and that accounts for a lot of the challenges that we face in the system. So I'm saying this openly: if it is that my income level allows me, for example, to pay for healthcare services, and it would not in any way impact me economically, should I be allowed to get healthcare free? When I could probably contribute towards making sure that the quality of the healthcare is better for the person who in fact can't afford it because I'm paying. Right? So that is part of the discussion that we need to have, and hence the reason why we are considering those things.
Thank you, Rena. At this time, we'd like to offer the floor to our peers if you have any final comments to make, and then Prime Minister, if you want to make some closing remarks, we'll allow you to do so. Mm-hmm. Yes?
Okay, thank you, Ms. Etienne. I just want to say a special thank you to all who participated in the consultations leading up to the development of the new pension plan. We truly appreciated the comments, the feedback. it really did help us to shape our broader thinking. There's a lot of things we didn't think about, and it really came from the people who participated in the consultation. So I want to place on record our sincerest thank you to everybody in one way or the other who contributed to the development of this new plan, which we are firmly, strongly believing will make a significant difference to the lives of our public officers.
Thank you so much, PS, and thank you for your thorough presentation this morning on pension reform. And of course, in the coming weeks, I know you will have some more public engagements. So, Prime Minister, you have the floor for final comments at this time.
No, thank you. I just want to thank PS and the team for the thorough, excellent, and detailed work that they've done on this very challenging and difficult subject. And as you've indicated, we will continue to educate the public. We'll continue to engage and speak on this issue. Pensions are not just for public servants. Pensions are for workers. I will repeat that some of the wealthiest countries in the world, in fact, use their pension funds quite effectively to invest and to create wealth for the country and for the workers of the country. So the aim here is that the government wants to be the catalyst for ensuring that systematically public servants, as well as statutory workers who work at statutory bodies, and then ultimately the private sector who employ persons can be given a vehicle or tool or means to ensure that they provide pensions for their workers. And so, as PS said, and I think this is important, the plan is designed in such a way that even private sector employers who do not yet have a pension scheme in place for the employees can come on board and join us in this process. So we really do look forward to the continuing engagement, the continuing education. And as you can see, PS has sat here for almost 2 hours addressing this issue. We have nothing to hide. This is in fact in the best interest of workers. It's in fact in the best interest of the nation. We are open to have suggestions. We are open to be criticized. We are open to have recommendations from people. But they need to come with recommendations. They need to come with things that would improve, rather than simply seek to just make mischief, make noise, and detract from something which undoubtedly is in the best interest of the workers of this country. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Indeed, your government is at work. Just by way of reminders, tomorrow the Ministry of Agriculture and our ministers will be supporting the Minister of Agriculture to distribute checks to our farmers, and this, of course, is a post-burial initiative by our government in the northern part of the island, in Plains District Office at 10 a.m. On the eastern side, Agricultural District Office in Grenville, in the Lasages District. That's happening at 8 o'clock tomorrow, and of course, distribution of checks will also occur on the western side of the island from 9 o'clock. I want to say special thanks again to the Ministry of Agriculture for coming on this morning, and of course, P.S. Marshall, Permanent Secretary within the Department of Public Administration, and of course, our Prime Minister for sharing some much-needed updates as it relates to infrastructure and what's happening on the weekend, National Heroes Day. That is Saturday morning. We're going to Progress Park at 9:30. Thank you all for joining us. To those of you on mainland in 𝐅𝐿 and Petit-Martinique, I know some of you were joining us this morning, and of course our diaspora, we want to thank you as well for coming on this morning. And I want to just leave you with this quote from our Permanent Secretary within the Department of Public Administration: "The secret of change is focus, not on fighting the old, but on building the new." Thanks again all for joining us, and have a terrific, a wonderful Wednesday.
All